Everyone looked at his brother and saw the perfect Omega. Nobody looked at me until the most powerful alpha in the room changed everything. Noah Bennett had heard those kinds of stories his entire life. Stories about Omegas who were admired, chosen, and celebrated. Stories about people who walked into a selection ceremony knowing the world was waiting for them. But Noah never believed he would be one of those people. The Bennett family arrived at the Westbridge Selection Center under a wave of attention. Two Omega brothers from the same respected family were appearing on the same day, and everyone already knew who they wanted to see. Lucas Bennett, Noah's older brother, was everything society admired. He was confident, graceful, intelligent, and naturally charming. Wherever Lucas went, people noticed. Wherever Lucas stood, conversations followed. Noah stood beside him with a quiet smile, happy for his brother but familiar with the feeling of disappearing. He had spent years learning how to stay in the background. When relatives praised Lucas, Noah smiled. When strangers compared them, Noah stayed quiet. When people called Lucas exceptional, Noah wondered if there was anything about himself that could ever be considered special. The selection ceremony hall was filled with elegant decorations, warm lights, and hundreds of guests waiting for the moment when alphas would make their choices. Noah looked around the room and already knew how the day would go. He was not angry. He was not surprised. He had become too familiar with being the person people noticed last. Lucas Bennett. The announcement echoed through the hall. Immediately, several influential alphas stepped forward. The room filled with excitement as Lucas received attention from every direction. Noah watched from a few steps away, offering a small smile. He was genuinely happy for his brother. Lucas deserved kindness. Lucas deserved happiness. Noah just wished, for once, someone would look at him the same way. One by one, the selections continued. Names were called. Promises were made. Families celebrated. And Noah remained standing quietly at the edge of the ceremony floor. Then came the final moment. The last group of alphas prepared to make their choices. Noah lowered his gaze, already accepting what everyone else seemed to believe. He was not the chosen one. He was the brother standing beside the person everyone wanted. But before the ceremony ended, the enormous doors at the back of the hall opened. The entire room became silent. Alexander Hayes entered, the apex alpha who had never chosen anyone before, the man whose reputation alone could change the atmosphere of any room. Everyone turned toward him. Whispers spread instantly. People expected Alexander to choose the most admired Omega present. They expected him to walk toward Lucas. Noah expected the same thing. But Alexander did something no one predicted. He looked past the crowd, past the families, past the person everyone had already decided was the obvious choice. His eyes stopped on Noah. For a moment, Noah wondered if he was mistaken. Maybe Alexander was looking at someone behind him. But there was nobody else. The most respected alpha in the room was looking directly at him. Alexander slowly walked forward, and every step made the silence heavier. Noah felt his heart race, not because he expected to be chosen, but because he had never experienced what it felt like to truly be seen. And when Alexander finally stopped in front of him, the entire world seemed to wait for his next words. The silence inside the selection hall felt impossible. Hundreds of people were watching, waiting for Alexander Hayes to explain why he had stopped in front of Noah Bennett. Noah stood completely still, convinced there had to be some misunderstanding. This was not how the ceremony was supposed to happen. This was not how his life usually went. "Are you certain?" one of the council members finally asked. The question carried the surprise everyone in the room was feeling. Alexander did not look away from Noah. Yes. His answer was simple, calm, and completely certain. The whispers grew louder. Everyone understood what this decision meant. Alexander Hayes was not an ordinary alpha. He came from one of the most respected families in the country. His choices affected traditions that had existed for generations. People expected him to choose someone like Lucas Bennett, someone who represented everything society admired. Yet Alexander had chosen Noah. Noah lowered his eyes, trying to understand what was happening. "I think there may be a mistake," he said quietly. Alexander looked at him with a calm expression. "Why would you think that?" Noah hesitated. He did not know how to explain a feeling he had carried for years. The feeling that he was always second. The feeling that no matter what he did, someone else would always shine brighter. "Because everyone was looking at my brother," Noah answered honestly. "And they were right too." Alexander studied him for a moment. "You believe being noticed means someone has more value?" Noah did not respond. The question stayed with him because he had never considered another answer. After the ceremony ended, Noah was invited to a private room where the selected Omegas usually met with their chosen alphas. He expected the moment to feel exciting. Instead, he felt nervous. He was afraid that once the attention disappeared, everything would return to normal. Alexander entered a few minutes later. Unlike everyone else, he did not treat Noah like a surprising decision or a difficult explanation. He simply treated him like a person. "You are waiting for me to change my mind," Alexander said. Noah looked away. "I am trying not to expect too much." Alexander's expression softened slightly. "Why?" Noah gave a small smile. "Because expecting something and losing it hurts more than never having it." For a moment, Alexander said nothing. Then he walked toward the window and looked over the city outside. "Do you know why I never participated in selection before today?" Noah shook his head. Alexander turned back toward him. "Because everyone kept telling me what kind of person I should choose. They showed me appearances, family names, and achievements. But nobody asked who someone truly was." Noah listened carefully. "Then what changed?" Alexander answered. "I saw someone who was kind even when nobody was rewarding him for it." Noah felt a strange emotion he could not explain. He had spent years believing his quiet nature was a weakness. Now, for the first time, someone saw it as strength. Outside the room, the news of Alexander's choice had already spread throughout Westbridge. Families were questioning his decision. The council was preparing discussions. Everyone wanted to know why the most powerful alpha had chosen the brother nobody expected. But Noah was no longer thinking about everyone else. He was thinking about one simple truth. For the first time in his life, someone had looked at him and chosen him without comparing him to anyone else. The morning after the selection ceremony, Noah Bennett woke up expecting everything to feel different. Instead, the quiet room felt almost exactly the same. The sunlight came through the curtains, the city outside continued moving, and the world had not magically become easier overnight. But one thing had changed. Noah no longer felt completely invisible. For the first time, someone had seen him without comparing him to his brother. The thought was comforting, but it was also frightening. Noah had spent years preparing himself to be overlooked. Being noticed was unfamiliar territory. When he arrived at the Bennett family residence, he immediately felt the difference. The house was filled with conversations about Alexander Hayes and the unexpected decision that had shocked everyone. Family members discussed the ceremony, the rumors, and the questions spreading throughout Westbridge. Noah quietly entered the room, expecting the attention to disappear once people remembered who he was. But this time, everyone looked at him. Lucas Bennett noticed first. His older brother approached with a calm expression instead of the usual confidence everyone admired. "Are you okay?" Lucas asked. Noah was surprised by the question. "I think so." Lucas looked around the room before lowering his voice. "I know this has been a lot." Noah smiled slightly. "Everyone expected you to be chosen." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "Maybe, but that does not mean you should not have been." The answer stayed with Noah. He had spent so much time believing Lucas was the reason he was ignored. But standing there, he realized something important. Lucas had never asked to be placed above him. The world had simply created that difference. Later that day, Noah met Alexander at a private garden near the Hayes estate. The peaceful space felt far away from the rumors and expectations surrounding them. Alexander noticed that Noah was quieter than usual. "You were thinking about what people said," Alexander said. Noah looked surprised. "How do you always know?" Alexander gave a small smile. "Because you look like someone carrying a question you are afraid to ask." Noah looked down at the path beneath them. "Do you ever regret your decision?" The question was honest. Alexander did not answer immediately. No, Noah looked at him. "Not even once." Alexander shook his head. "No, but I understand why you wonder." Noah took a deep breath. "Everyone thinks my brother was the obvious choice." Alexander nodded. "Yes, everyone saw what was easy to notice. And you did not." Noah asked. Alexander looked toward the garden. "I saw someone who stepped aside so others could shine. Someone who stayed kind even when nobody was paying attention. Someone who never tried to become someone else just to be accepted." Noah felt his chest tighten with emotion. Those qualities were the same things he had always considered ordinary. He never thought they were reasons someone would value him. That evening, the selection council sent an official request for Alexander and Noah to attend a review meeting. The message explained that Alexander's choice had created questions about the selection process. Some believed the decision challenged traditions that had existed for years. Noah read the message carefully. A part of him wanted to step away. The old version of himself would have apologized for causing attention. But he remembered something Alexander told him. His value was not decided by other people's expectations. Noah looked at the invitation again and accepted. For the first time, he was not walking into a room hoping someone would notice him. He was walking in knowing he belonged there. The council hall of Westbridge had always been a place where decisions were made before anyone questioned them. For generations, the selection process had followed the same traditions, and most people believed those traditions could never be challenged. But when Noah Bennett walked into the hall beside Alexander Hayes, everyone knew something had changed. Noah remembered standing in that same building only days earlier, watching his brother receive the attention of the entire room. Back then, he had believed he was simply the person nobody noticed. Now, as he stood before the council, he realized he was facing something much bigger than his own fears. The meeting began with polite introductions, but the atmosphere quickly became serious. Several council members looked toward Alexander with concern. They respected him, but they did not understand his choice. Alexander Hayes, one member said, "Your decision has created many questions among the families involved in selection." Alexander remained calm. Questions are not a problem. Refusing to ask them is. Noah stood quietly beside him, listening carefully. A part of him still expected someone to say he did not belong there. That old feeling was difficult to erase. For years, he had learned to accept being the second choice. He had learned to smile when others were celebrated. But now, every person in the room was looking at him, waiting to hear what he had to say. One council member turned toward Noah. "Do you understand the importance of this situation?" Noah took a moment before answering. The old Noah would have lowered his head and apologized for causing uncertainty. The old Noah would have said he did not want to create problems. But he was beginning to understand that staying silent did not make problems disappear. "I understand," Noah said calmly. "And I also understand that every person deserves to be seen before they are judged." The room became quiet. Alexander looked at him with a small expression of approval, but he did not speak. This was Noah's moment. After the meeting, Noah and Alexander walked through the halls of the council building. The long corridors were filled with portraits of past leaders and important figures from selection history. Noah looked at them carefully. "Do you think they will accept this?" he asked. Alexander looked ahead. "Not everyone accepts change immediately." Noah nodded. "That sounds difficult." "It is," Alexander replied. "But difficult does not mean impossible." Later that evening, Noah returned to the Bennett family home. He found Lucas sitting in the garden, watching the sunset. For a moment, neither brother spoke. Then Lucas said, "You know, everyone always thought I was lucky because people noticed me first." Noah looked at him. Lucas continued, "But sometimes being the person everyone expects you to be can feel just as lonely." Noah had never considered that before. He had always seen Lucas as someone who had everything. But maybe everyone carried something others could not see. "I never wanted you to feel invisible," Lucas said quietly. Noah smiled. "I know." The conversation changed something between them. They were no longer two brothers being compared. They were simply two people who had grown up under expectations they never chose. The next morning, Alexander received new information from the council archives. There were records connected to Noah's past that had not been fully reviewed. Something about Noah's background had been misunderstood for years. Alexander looked at the message, then at Noah. "There is more to discover." Noah took a breath. The unknown still scared him, but this time he did not feel alone. Whatever the truth was, he was ready to face it. The hidden records from the council archives changed the way everyone looked at Noah Bennett. For years, his name had been connected with quiet expectations and comparisons to his brother. But now, inside the oldest archive room of the selection center, Noah discovered that his story had always contained a truth nobody had known. He stood beside Alexander Hayes as they reviewed documents that had been carefully preserved for decades. The room was filled with shelves of old records, digital files, and information from past selection ceremonies. Noah looked at the documents in front of him with uncertainty. "I do not understand," Noah said quietly. "Why would anyone hide this?" Alexander studied the records carefully before answering. Sometimes people hide things because they think they are protecting someone. But protection can become another kind of limitation. The documents revealed that Noah's family had a rare history within the Omega community. Unlike what many people believed, Noah was not simply an ordinary Omega who had always lived in his brother's shadow. His family carried a unique background that was difficult to categorize, which caused some people in the past to keep those details private. Over time, that privacy created misunderstanding. People saw only what was visible. They saw Lucas, the confident and admired brother. They saw Noah, the quiet one standing nearby. Nobody looked deeper. Noah read the information slowly, trying to connect it with everything he had experienced. So all those years, he said, I thought people ignored me because I was not enough. Alexander looked at him. You were never not enough. The sentence was simple, but it carried a weight Noah had never felt before. He had spent so much of his life searching for the thing that made him different from Lucas. Now he realized he had been searching for the wrong answer. He was not missing something. He was simply never given the chance to be understood. Later that afternoon, Noah walked through the gardens of the Hayes estate with Alexander. The peaceful surroundings felt completely different from the crowded selection hall where his journey had started. I always thought my brother was the person everyone wanted to see, Noah admitted. And maybe that was true, Alexander said. But being noticed first does not mean being more valuable. Noah looked at him. How did you see something nobody else did? Alexander was quiet for a moment. Because I was not looking for someone everyone already admired. The answer stayed with Noah. Alexander had never searched for perfection. He had searched for something real. Someone who was kind without needing recognition. Someone who stayed genuine even when nobody was watching. That evening, Lucas visited Noah. Their conversation was different from before. There was no comparison between them. No competition. Just two brothers finally speaking honestly. I wish I had realized sooner how you felt, Lucas said. Noah smiled gently. I think we both had things we never said. 4. The first time, Noah felt like his relationship with his brother was not defined by who received more attention. It was defined by understanding. But the discovery inside the archives raised another question. If Noah's true background had been hidden for so long, who had decided that the world should never know? Alexander received another message from the council. The investigation was expanding, and more forgotten records were being uncovered. Noah looked at the message and felt a familiar uncertainty. But this time, he did not feel like the forgotten brother standing alone. He was standing beside someone who believed in him before anyone else did. And now, he was ready to discover the complete truth. The investigation into Noah Bennett's hidden records brought a new level of attention to the selection system. What started as one unexpected choice had become a question about how many people had been judged without ever being truly understood. Noah stood inside the council hall once again, but this time he did not feel like the quiet Omega standing behind his brother. He stood there as someone whose story mattered. Alexander Hayes remained beside him, not speaking for him, but offering the support Noah had never experienced before. The council members reviewed the latest findings carefully. Several old records showed that many Omegas from less influential families had received incomplete evaluations over the years. Their abilities, personalities, and backgrounds were often overlooked because the system focused too heavily on reputation and appearance. Noah listened quietly as the information was presented. A part of him felt sadness. He thought about all the people who may have felt the same way he once did. People who believed they were not enough because nobody had taken the time to understand them. This was never only about me, Noah said. Everyone turned toward him. He continued, if the system could misunderstand my story, then it could misunderstand many others too. Alexander looked at him with pride. Noah was no longer asking why he had been ignored. He was thinking about how things could become better for others. After the meeting, Noah and Alexander walked through the city of Westbridge. The streets were filled with people going about their daily lives, unaware of how much the selection system was beginning to change. You have changed, Alexander said. Noah smiled slightly. I think I finally stopped trying to become someone else. Alexander nodded. That was always the person I noticed. Noah looked at him. The person I was before everyone had an opinion about me? Exactly. Those words stayed with Noah. He realized that the greatest change had not come from being chosen by Alexander. It had come from finally seeing himself clearly. Later that week, Noah returned to the Bennett family home. Lucas was there, reviewing updates about the selection reform. The two brothers sat together in a quiet room, no longer separated by expectations. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if things were different? Lucas asked. Noah thought about it. maybe I would still spend my life trying to prove I was worth noticing. Lucas looked at him seriously. You never had to prove that. It was the first time Noah truly believed those words. Meanwhile, Alexander continued working with the council to create a fairer evaluation process. Some people welcomed the changes immediately, while others struggled with letting go of old traditions. But Alexander remained patient. He knew real change required time. One evening, Noah received a message from the archives containing the final piece of information about his records. The person who changed his information had not done it to remove his value. They had done it because they feared what would happen if society discovered Noah's true potential too early. The decision had been wrong, but the reason behind it was more complicated than Noah expected. He looked at the message for a long moment. Years of confusion were finally beginning to make sense. Alexander found him sitting quietly in the garden. You found the answer, he said. Noah nodded. Yes, and somehow, I feel more peaceful than I expected. Alexander sat beside him. Because now you know the truth. Noah looked toward the evening sky. Because now I know I was never the person everyone overlooked. I was just waiting for someone to truly see me. And this time, he knew he would never forget it. The truth about Noah Bennett's records was finally revealed, but the discovery did not bring the simple ending everyone expected. Instead, it opened a new question about the future of the entire selection system. Noah stood in the council building with Alexander Hayes beside him, looking at the updated reports that showed how many people had been judged by incomplete information. For years, the system had focused on what was easy to recognize: family reputation, social influence, public image. But Noah's story proved that a person's true value could not always be seen immediately. The council announced a new review process that would examine how selections were made and how individuals were evaluated. Many people supported the changes, but others worried that traditions built over generations were being questioned too quickly. Noah understood those concerns. Change was never simple, but he also understood something he had never understood before. Staying silent would not make things better. During the public discussion, Noah was invited to speak about his experience. Standing in front of the same people who had once watched him disappear behind his brother, he felt a familiar nervousness. The difference was that this time, he did not let that feeling control him. I used to believe being overlooked meant there was something wrong with me, Noah said. But I learned that sometimes people fail to see something valuable simply because they are not looking deeply enough. The room became quiet as everyone listened. Noah continued, a person should not have to become someone else just to be recognized. Alexander watched from the side, knowing this was the moment Noah had been building toward. He had never wanted Noah to depend on him. He had only wanted Noah to see the confidence that had always been inside him. After the meeting, Noah walked through the halls of the council building with a different feeling. The portraits on the walls represented generations of leaders and decisions that shaped the world around them. For the first time, Noah did not feel like someone who did not belong in that history. He felt like someone who could become part of it. Later that evening, Noah and Alexander returned to the Hayes estate. The garden was quiet, and the peaceful atmosphere reminded Noah of how much had changed since the day of the selection ceremony. Do you ever think about that first day? Noah asked. Alexander looked at him. Every day. Noah smiled. I still do not understand how you noticed me. Alexander answered without hesitation. Because you were the only person in the room who was not trying to be chosen. Noah looked surprised. Alexander continued. Everyone else was focused on showing what they wanted people to see. You were simply being yourself. Those words meant more to Noah than he expected. He had spent years believing his quiet nature was the reason he was forgotten. Now he understood it was also the reason someone special had recognized him. The next morning, a final report arrived from the council archives. It contained information about the future of selection and the changes that would follow. Noah read the message carefully, then smiled. The system that once made him feel invisible was becoming a place where others would have a chance to be understood. But before he could fully celebrate, one final detail caught his attention. The report mentioned that another hidden record connected to the old selection system had been discovered. Another story. Another person who had been overlooked. Noah looked at Alexander. It seems there is still more to fix. Alexander smiled. Then we keep going. And for the first time, Noah was not afraid of the journey ahead. He was no longer the brother standing in someone else's shadow. He was someone ready to help others step into the light. The discovery of another hidden record changed the direction of the selection reform once again. Noah Bennett thought he had already learned the most important lesson of his journey, but the new information reminded him that many people were still waiting to be understood. He returned to the council hall with Alexander Hayes, ready to face another difficult conversation. This time, Noah was not there because he was the subject of a mystery. He was there because he had become someone who could help reveal the truth. The council presented the new findings carefully. The hidden records showed that several individuals throughout history had been overlooked because they did not match the expectations of the selection system. Their stories were different, but the pattern was the same. People had been judged by what others assumed about them instead of who they truly were. Noah listened quietly, remembering the person he used to be. The person who stood at the edge of the room while everyone celebrated someone else. The person who believed being ignored was simply his place in the world. But now he understood something different. Being unseen by others did not mean he had no value. It only meant they had not taken the time to look deeper. This cannot continue, Noah said. His voice was calm, but everyone in the room could hear his determination. No one should have to wait years for someone to discover their worth. Alexander stood beside him, proud but silent. He knew Noah did not need him to speak anymore. Noah had found his own voice. The council agreed to create a new approach for selection. Future evaluations would focus on personal qualities, choices, and individual character instead of relying only on reputation or family background. The changes would take time, but the first step had already been made. Later that evening, Noah and Alexander walked through the city of Westbridge. The streets were familiar, but Noah saw them differently now. He no longer felt like a person watching life happen from the outside. He felt connected to the world around him. "Do you ever miss the way things were before all of this?" Noah asked. Alexander thought for a moment. No. Noah looked at him curiously. "Why?" Alexander smiled slightly. "Because before this, I never knew someone like you." Noah looked away with a small smile, still surprised by how easily Alexander could say things that made him feel understood. Their relationship had started with an unexpected choice, but it had grown through patience, trust, and honest conversations. It was not about one person saving another. It was about two people learning that they did not have to face the world alone. A few weeks later, the first changes to the selection system were announced publicly. The response was mixed, but many people began sharing stories of their own experiences. People who had once stayed quiet started speaking. People who had once felt invisible began believing they mattered. Noah watched the announcement from the garden of the Hayes estate, with Alexander beside him. "Do you remember when I thought I was the only person who felt that way?" Noah asked. Alexander nodded. "You were never the only one." Noah looked toward the city lights. The world had not become perfect overnight. There were still challenges ahead. But something important had changed. People were beginning to look beyond appearances. They were beginning to understand that every person had a story worth hearing. And Noah finally understood the truth he had searched for all his life. He was never someone waiting for the world to choose him. He was someone who had always deserved to be seen. The Westbridge Selection Center looked different on the day the new system was officially introduced. The same grand hall where Noah Bennett once stood quietly at the edge of the room was now filled with people who came to witness a new beginning. Years ago, Noah had entered that hall believing he would always be the person standing behind someone else. Today, he walked through those same doors with confidence, knowing that his story had never been defined by how others saw him. Alexander Hayes walked beside him, just as he had from the beginning. But this time, Noah was not following someone who believed in him. He was walking beside someone who had helped him believe in himself. The announcement ceremony began with the council presenting the final changes to the selection process. The new system would focus on understanding each individual before making any decisions. Background, personality, dreams, and personal choices would matter more than reputation or family expectations. The room listened carefully as the changes were explained. Many people remembered how the old system had affected those who did not fit traditional expectations. Noah stood among them, remembering his younger self. The Omega who smiled while feeling invisible. The brother who watched everyone choose Lucas first. The person who thought being overlooked was something he had to accept. But that person was no longer who he was. After the ceremony, Noah and Alexander returned to the garden where they had shared many important conversations. The peaceful path through the flowers and trees reminded Noah of the journey that had brought him here. It feels strange, Noah said. What feels strange? Alexander asked. Noah looked around the garden, knowing that the person I was before would never believe this could happen. Alexander smiled. Maybe that is because he had not met the right people yet. Noah looked at him. You mean the right person? Alexander nodded. That too. Noah laughed softly. It was a simple moment, but it represented everything that had changed. He no longer measured his value by the attention he received. He no longer compared himself to Lucas or anyone else. He finally understood that being different was not the same as being less. Later that evening, Noah visited his family home. Lucas was waiting for him in the garden. The two brothers sat together and watched the sunset, just like they had many times before. But this time, there was no feeling of competition between them. I used to think I had to be the opposite of you to matter, Noah admitted. Lucas smiled. And I used to think I had to always be perfect because everyone expected me to be. They both laughed quietly, realizing how much pressure they had carried without saying it. They were not rivals. They were simply two brothers who had spent years trying to fit into roles created by others. As time passed, the story of Noah and Alexander became a reminder throughout Westbridge that people were more than the labels placed on them. The Omega who was once overlooked became someone who inspired others to believe in themselves. The apex alpha who seemed unreachable became someone known for choosing understanding over expectation. But Noah remembered the truth more than anything else. The greatest moment of his life was not the day someone finally chose him. It was the day he stopped believing he needed someone else's choice to prove his worth. Standing beside Alexander, looking at the future ahead, Noah knew he had found something more meaningful than recognition. He had found acceptance, confidence, and a place where he truly belonged.